changing files ownership, which is a show own command, right? So we've been doing file management. We were doing user management. Now we got into file management. Okay. Let me get back to do a little bit review of what we've done so far so we can, so at this point, we're looking at file permissions. But prior to that, we were looking at, overall, you're looking at file users and file management, right? We had looked at file hierarchies and all that, how the files are organized in Linux. But typically getting to user management and file management, we'll look at user and file permissions. So we've done a lot of commands so far. You've seen how to add a user and how to delete a user. Let me do a little bit of demonstration real quick so you guys, I can refresh your memory what I'm talking about. So some of you, I know it still seems abstract, but let me bring your understanding a little bit close to, you have a system, and let's assume this is a system, right? You have a system, and you also have a cloud infrastructure. This is your cloud infrastructure. Your cloud infrastructure is holding a Linux based application or a Linux system. Let's call it a Linux system. And you are right here, right? And in this Unix system, this is your, let's say this is your laptop, okay? This is your computer. Now, what you want to do is you want to get access into this Linux system. What do you do and how do you get into this Linux system? You SSH into the Linux system, right? So you SSH into the Linux system. Okay. Now that's you. You have access. Say you are the administrator of the system. You are the person at the gateway. No one else can get into the system. Any other person will get into the system through you giving them access. So you are, first of all, a person that does the management of who gets into the system. This is your enterprise system. As a DevOps engineer, you have other people that works under you. First of all, you have, let's say you have a DevOps engineer. Let's do some characterizations. You have DevOps engineers. You have developers. You have architects. You have product managers. Who else do you have in your team? You have agile master or whatever they call it, right? The program manager, whatever is agile, whatever the master or whatever they call it.
Scrum master.
Scrum master. You have a scrum master. Okay. So you have these people, say maybe you have different in engineering, you have maybe 4 engineers, 4 DevOps engineers. You have 10 developers. Usually architects are only just maybe 1 architect. Then you have the program manager, maybe 2 program managers. You have technical program manager and the real program manager. Then you have 1 scrum master. All these people need access to this Linux system. So first of all, you will do what's called user management. User management, because everybody cannot just access the system, right? So you are to manage whoever is going to get access into this, right? In user management, you have to add users. You should be able to delete users, right? and you should be able to give users permission, right? So that is user management. What else can you do with users? You add users, you can delete users, you can put users into groups. Right? The different groups that we have is DevOps, developers, architects. So you have to put them into groups, right? From the groups, so you group them into the different specialties, right? So that's user management, and that's what we did first. We did using user add, right, to add users. You can delete users. You can do group add to add users, and you can use group delete to delete users, right? That is what we were doing with those commands, right? Everyone is following, right? Then, apart from that, you can also do file management. Okay. Now, files are created because you don't want to give everybody access to these files, to the files that are created in this system, right? So what can you do with files, right? You can create a file. You can create a directory, maybe directory, start with a directory. You can create a file. You can delete directory. You can delete a file. What else can you do? You can give permissions to files, to directories. You can give permission to files as well. So that's what we've been looking at, right? These are the two areas we've looked at so far. Okay. With the Linux commands, right? These are what we're doing because you have to control access to the Linux system. So you add users to this system and you also manage the file system. So we use Linux commands to be able to add users, delete users, give users different permissions, right? Then you can group users, put them in groups. You can also manage the file system, how to create a directory, delete the directory, create permissions for directories, and so on and so forth. So that's what we've been doing, right? Does that make sense? Does it make sense? So if you get hired and they say, okay, for example, you get hired into a new company, how do they call it? If a company just formed, right, and they don't have anyone, you're the first person to become a DevOps. Your responsibility will be to create these users, right? Your responsibility is also to create these files, right? And give access to whoever needs access to these files, because not everybody would have access to these files. So your responsibility is who should have access to these files. That is file permissions and directory permissions, right? You see they are related, right? So this is related. Not everybody would have the same permission, right? Some would have read permissions, some would have write permission, some will have read-write permissions, some will have only read permissions, some will have, some of the files will be executable files, right? Some will have executable files, some will not have ability to execute the files. And if it's executable files, what do you do to make them executable files? What permission do you give that file to become executable file? So that's what we've been studying. That's all the commands that we've been running from last week. That is what we've been doing, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm glad I'm able to explain that. I was thinking of how I can explain it so that this is not just a theory, you understand how it actually works. Okay, so that's what it was. So we've gone through user management, user add command, user delete command, password, right? You use the password to see who are the users in the system, right? And you can do EC password and EC group to find out who are the users and what are the groups that we have in the system, okay? Then we get into we access into our system. That's how we get connected into the system. We've done all that. This is the group, how you delete group, add group, and find out what group your users are in. We've done all that. So go back to the previous video and review what we've done, right? We've covered a lot of grounds and we had some homework as well. I believe some of you must have done the homework. So if you have problems with the homework, if you need me to show you how to do it, let me know if there's anyone that is running into problems with. But I'm sure everyone should be able to do the homework. If you have not attempted it, go back and attempt it, right? And we've covered all this in that process. But so that's what we've been doing. Then we got into file management, right? How to give file permissions, right? We get into the show mode and show on command. Show mode command, right? You use show mode commands to give permissions to files, right? You use show on command to give ownership to the users, right? So the users that I was talking about listed, if you want to give ownership to a user to be able to own a file or a directory, you use the show on command. If you want to give a permission for a user to be able to access the file, you use a show mode command. So in that case, you know the difference between a show mode and a show on. On is ownership. Mode is modification. You're modifying a file so that someone can have access to it. Owning, you're changing ownership to the file so that the person can have access to the file. So that's the meaning. So we've gone into show mode and show on, and we talked about the read, write, and executable commands. These are the three commands. You can read a file, you can write into a file, and you can execute a file is a binary file or an executable file, right? And let me see, then we get into the permissions. When you see a dash is a file. If you see a D in the beginning of a file, when you do ls or ll, you check the file is either a dash or a D. A dash means it's a file. A D means it's a directory, right? All that is contained in the previous video. So if you run it, you see a dash like this in front of a command like this. If you see a dash, it means it's a file, right? So file, this is a file. Then if you see a D in front of this, it is a directory, right? Okay. So how do you give permissions to a file? You can use for a user. So U stands for user, G stands for group, O stands for others. So you have U for users, right? G for group, and O is for others. Okay. So with this, you can use a show mode command. Show mode, I'm changing file directory for a show mode, only for the user, U. And what do I want to do with this file for the user? I want to give this user, right, read and write command. So this file will automatically have read and write command only to the user. Now, for the entire group, in this command means minus. When it's a plus, it means I want to give permission. When it's a minus, it means I want to remove permission. I want to take away permission that I had, right? And what permissions do I have? I have all for read. I have W for write, and I have X for execute, right? So that's spelling of execute, right? Okay, so read, write, execute. So if I want to give permissions to any file, I can use the user, U for user. I can give read and write permission, R and W, plus R and W, then the name of the file, right? So that user now have a read and write permission. If if there's a file that already the user or the group already had for example, you have a file that has wx. This is for the group. The group has wx. When I do g minus w, then the file name, I'm taking away this w, right, out of this. So this would end up having x. So it doesn't have a write permission. So in other words, the user or the group, the entire group, would not have ability to write into this file. You can read the file, but you cannot write into the file. You cannot modify the file. That's what that means, okay? And the next one example is for others. I want to give others executable permission. In that case, these others, every other person can, if you download, for example, if you want to, we don't have a zip, right? Let me show you something real quick. Okay. Right now, if I do zip, I don't have a zip command in my system right now. I don't have it, but I can install it. I'm not the person that created this zip application. So for me, I'm others. I'm not the owner of it, right? I don't belong to the organization that created it. So after I've developed this zip file, the organization that developed it, they send it out to others. So they have it embedded in the Linux, right? So I am others. So being an other, I'm given an executable right. So I can execute this file, meaning I can download this file and run this file, right? So if I do something like this, sudo yum install zip, right? I'll be able to download this file, and I'll be able to, as soon as it downloads, it's going to execute the file for me, meaning that I have an executable right, even if I am not a user, right? Or I'm not a group owner, or I am others, meaning if I'm an other, I still have executable right. But if this right is taken away from me, I cannot execute this zip file. So if I do this, I'm able to install the zip, right? I'm able to zip this file. So if I download any file that is a zip file now, I can unzip this file because I have the executable right to do that, okay? So that's the use case of this, right? So you have understanding of where I'm coming from. Okay, I know it still looks a little bit foxy. I'm spending time to explain it so you understand it a little bit better, okay? Right, so you have another way of changing permissions to files. This is one way. This is very simple. If you understand this RWX, you understand user UGO, RWX, user group, then you can do this combination if you want to change file. Read write, read execute, and so on and so forth. But there's another way you can change permissions to file. You can use numbers. Now you can say read is 4, write is 2, execute x is 1, right? If you have that number, is a function of adding this number. So read write will be 4 plus 2, 6. If I want to give read write execute a permission, I'll give 4 plus 2 plus 1. That will give me 7. So if I want to give everybody, for example, I want to give the user, the group, and others the entire permission, I'll use 777. So meaning that the user, so I'll do chmod 777, then the file name, the name of the file. So the user has, the group and others, everybody has all permissions to do anything to this file. They can read this file, they can write this file, they can execute this file. But you can also limit who writes, read, and execute by using a number. For example, if you use chmod 640, 4 plus 2 is 6, meaning that the file only has, for a user, only has read and write permission. Then I use 4, number 4, for group. So all the people in this group would only have read permission. Then I use 0 for others. So every other person cannot read, cannot write, cannot execute this file, right? You don't have access to this file, right? So that's how you create permissions for a file. This is another example as well. The user has full permission, which is 7, right? Now you see this, 4 and 1 is 5, meaning that the others here only have read and execute permission. You cannot modify this file. You cannot read into this file, right? And every other person has a 1, right? So a 1 meaning that I can execute this file, but I cannot modify this file. I don't have permission to even read to the file, but I can download it. And so, for example, that zip file, right? I don't have access. I cannot read the file. If I try to read the inside of the file, the code inside the zip file, I cannot. I only have executable permission. They only give me 1. So I can execute it. I cannot read it. I cannot write into that file. I can only execute it. So most software companies always give this permission after they've created a software for others to use. So you cannot modify the file. You can only execute the file. You can use the file, right? So that's how to give permissions to file. I've shown you 2 ways. This is one of the way. You can just use R and W and X. And this one is another way of using it. You can use numbers, combination of numbers to give permissions. Any question? Any question? And like we use this is just an explanation that you can use add, minus, right? And equals to add or to remove permissions or to express permissions explicitly, right? That's just to explain that. And you see we've already done that. For user, you can use +X for execution, which I showed you that already. We looked at that already, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we've done all that. This is just a revision of what we did last time, and this is just a repetition. For example, if you want to give access to this file, right, you use the chill mode 640. This one is 771, then the name of the file. If you not really followed, we did a demonstration on all this in the last class. So watch the video again. That will give you a little more insight. And this is where we start.